Hello everyone, welcome to Edie's Craft Room. I'm Hannah Catherine Brand. I have been busy working on some very tiny blocks for the Fat Quarter Shop Dragon Fruit Block of the Month, or quilt along, because you can tell I made quite a few more than just one block. So I am so excited to walk you through my process, especially because this was a new technique for me, and you get to enjoy all of the beautiful bright Tula Pink fabrics. So with that said, let's jump in. I am so excited to get started with the Dragon Fruit Block of the Month. This is a Fat Quarter Shop exclusive, and look at these beautiful fabrics. I'll show them to you in just a minute. Now, this obviously is the pattern, and then the block of the month also, it comes with the foundation paper. So this is actually a 12-inch squared foundation paper, which I have never seen it this big, but I'm really excited to work with this. I haven't done much of this technique before. And these pads, they're also just exclusive for the pattern. So it's not just like a pad of Courthouse steps or economy blocks or snail trails. This pad actually has all three of these blocks in there because that's what you need for the pattern. There is this size, which is this 3x6-inch flying geese. And then this one's the thickest, it's the 6-inch pad, and then the 4-inch pad. So I believe month one, which is what I'm going to be working on today, it is making the 4-inch blocks, or at least a good number of them. So we'll be using that, and I'm very thankful to have this paper for such small blocks, because we all know that's when accuracy can get tricky when you're dealing with those really tiny pieces. So I'm gonna set this aside just for a minute and let's get into the fabric, because we all know this is our favorite part. So these are Tula Pink fabrics, and I've talked before about how much I love Tula Pink. I think she is just an amazing artist. Like, truly, her and Lori Holt are just such visionaries. I have just never been able to figure out a way to make her fabric work for me and my style of quilts that I like. So I love that Fat Quarter Shop put this together. I'm not affiliated, just a fan. And anyway, so we'll be doing the blocks for block one. So there's actually quite a few. We have the apple block, the mulberry block, the guava block, the lime block, and the papaya block. And it looks like we are making 4 of each of these. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna be making 20 blocks. Oh my goodness. And this is only month one. That is something that really surprised me actually when I took a look at the pattern, because when you see it, you know, kind of holistically, it doesn't look like, it looks large, right? Like the motif is fairly large. So you don't really appreciate how these tiny blocks are making up this big quilt. And this quilt finishes at 84.5 inches square. So it's fairly large. I originally reserved the backing set for this, but you can kind of see it here, but I actually decided to forego it. I think with something like this, either I'm gonna find a large motif Tula Pink fabric that I just really love and put it on the back, or I'm gonna put Cuddle on the back of it, because how amazing would this be with like a hot pink or a lime green or this blue Cuddle, and just make it really cozy. So that's my plan for now, and let's go through the fabric. Sorry, I have really teased you long enough with this. These fabrics are so beautiful and bright, and I feel like my lighting is not doing it justice. It's fairly early in the morning when I am filming this, so they're a little bit dull as the sun is kind of coming up, but hopefully you can still appreciate. Look at this one, all the little fruit. There's a pineapple, I think watermelon, the grapes. Oh, so cute. Now, for those of you who are big into English paper piecing, you probably are very familiar with Tula Pink fabrics. I also see her fabrics used a lot in making bags. They're just really, really fun for those two projects because you can fussy cut so well with these fabrics for English paper piecing. So anyway, and I think this is the fabric. This is our background fabric, but I think this is also what they are using on the back if you buy the backing set from Fat Quarter Shop. So super cute. You all have also heard me though talk about my severe ornithophobia, and we have some birds here. So, you know, the more I can minimize the use of birds in my projects, the better for me. I love this fabric. Oh, so much to choose here. This one's probably my favorite though. This color is just gorgeous. It reminds me of like a geode. Lovely. So what we'll do is get to ironing and start piecing. Now that we have our pressed fabrics, I'm going to start cutting. And I love these blocks of the month because y'all know I like cutting small pieces of fabric. So this is just perfect for me. I can do this right here on my rotating cutting mat, and I don't have to take the whole kit and caboodle up to my kitchen countertop. So there are just a lot of 1.5 inch strips. So I'm just going to be cutting a bunch of them. I think I'm cutting 4 layers of fabric at a time. So I'm just gonna do a few of these. And then, as many of you know, Fat Quarter Shop is very generous with the fabric that they put in kits. So I'm gonna try and leave a fairly big scrap. I'll cut more if I need to. But if I'm able to get some healthy scraps out of this project, that will be really exciting. So I'll just set this to the side. This is folded in half, and then we can pick it back up if we need it. But right now I'll take these strips and cut them down. I will be really doing the same process for everything because, as we saw earlier, these are all log cabin blocks, Courthouse stuff, so they're made of just rectangles. So we're going to be cutting a lot of rectangles today, so I won't bore you with getting into the intricacies of that, but we'll meet back here when I have all of my strips cut out and we're ready to start paper piecing. Now it's time to start piecing these blocks. So I have my pattern right here that I'm going to be referring to. We're going to be making the apple block, which is one of our log cabin quilt blocks, and it is 4.5 inches square, so very, very small. And the first thing that we'll do is pick up our corresponding pieces, and then they have the placement number here in the pattern. So I am choosing here my first square, and I did go to the video tutorial that Fat Quarter Shop put out. I will link it below because I was reading the instructions and I just could not figure out for the life of me how to do it. There's a little QR code here at the bottom on the different blocks, so that was incredibly helpful, just being able to visualize it. But I'll visualize it for you here as well and just share my own thoughts. But of course, Kimberly Jolly's is the original. So anyway, so first thing you do is you take your paper and flip it over. And I find that holding it up to the light, I can see here, they mentioned using a light box or that sort of thing, but just holding it up to the light has been helpful to me just to be able to see the lines from the wrong side of the paper. So I'll do that, and actually first what I'll do is fold on my 1 to 2 line. So I found, I tried it with a ruler, I tried a bunch of different things, but I found for me the thing that worked best was just putting my fingernail right on that line and then creasing it like that. That was just fastest, most effective. I got really hung up on making sure that this was like perfect, but I realized, you know, this is really just to mark your seam allowance. So if it's a little bit off, it's not terrible. Your stitches are going to be on the actual lines, and that's what matters in terms of accuracy. So it's okay if things are a little off. I'll save you that stress that I went through. So anyway, I will flip this over, and you are putting your first piece of fabric right side up. This is a mistake I've made, I think 3 out of 3 times so far. I'm just gonna put it so there's about 1/4 of an inch on either side of that square 1 lines. And what you can do, you can use glue. I've just been using a pin just because it's fast. And then you're already ready to move on to your second square. So here's my second piece. Now this is gonna go right sides together. So here's my second, my second square. You could trim this to 1/4 inch. That's probably best practices, but this looks like a pretty good 1/4 of an inch already. So I'm just gonna leave it, and I will put this right sides together and take my pin out and just repin here. Okay, so now that I have that together, there's my 1/4 inch seam allowance. I flip this over, take it to the sewing machine, and just stitch on the line that is in between 1 and 2. And they recommend going about 1/4 of an inch on either side of these guidelines. I do about that, probably more of 1/8 of an inch. I just want it so that when I'm sewing my other seams, they're intersecting, just to really make sure I have that extra reinforcement of the fabric. So let's take this to the sewing machine. And I do, if I leave my pins in, I am sewing incredibly slowly, but best practices are certainly to take your pin out. There we go, just get right over it. And there is our first one. So take the pin out, and then we're pressing toward the fabric that we just added. So there we go. You could take this to the ironing board. I did that when I first started these, but I have found just using one of these rulers, or excuse me, these rollers is so much faster. So there's 1 and 2. Now we move on to, I think that's the hardest part. Once you get going, it's so much easier. So now we move on to 3. So you'll probably need to pull the paper back just a little bit from that seam. There we go. And then we're creasing, getting everything fairly lined up. Now at this point, you would trim that 1/4 of an inch, but as I said before, this one looks pretty good to me. So we will just move forward, and I'm finding, okay, which fabric goes on the square 3. It is our cotton candy fabric. So I am picking up that corresponding fabric and putting it right sides together here. Now you could pin this. I find that once I get past these small pieces, I am able just to take it over to the sewing machine like this, flip it upside down, make sure, you know, everything's staying together. You don't want to move it. And then just putting it right on my machine, keeping everything together, and then stitching, just to save myself an extra step. And now we have our rectangle 3 done. Just pressing with my roller. And now it's on to 4. So we just repeat that process over again. There is our rectangle 4 line. I'm just pulling the seam back, creasing with my fingernail. Now here's a situation where we definitely want to trim. I am just taking my ruler and using the 1/4 inch marking here to give myself a good 1/4 inch seam, pushing that off to the side. And now I have this nice straight line to align my next piece of fabric. So we know from the paper, see, this is kind of like darkened, this is light. So we know our background fabric is going to go over here and our pattern fabric is going to go over here. I will go ahead and also just check here. So we're going to be using this emerald fabric and placing that right sides together. And I like to do it so that I just have a little bit of the fabric hanging off of either side. Flip it and then back to the machine. This is a really good process for those of you like me who kind of get just bored doing one thing for too long. It's a lot of switching steps, you know, like the sew, cut, press of quilting. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. So now we have our seam pressing. And it's time to move on to 5. So 5 we have right here. Pull our paper back. One other thing that Kimberly recommended was using a smaller stitch length. It helps apparently take the paper off easier. So I moved mine down to 1.5 on my machine. And you can see there's just, well, you might actually not be able to see it all, but they're just really baby stitches here. So that will be great to make that part of the process easier. Trimming my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And let's see, we're on 5, so I'll check, yep, using this emerald fabric again, right sides together, leaving just a little bit on either side of our existing unit, flipping over, and stitching on the number 5 line. And repeating our process. So I am going to continue doing this. Hopefully you get the idea now. If not, please feel free to go back into the chapter of this video to rewatch until it makes more sense. But what I'll do is I'll go all the way up to 13, stop, and then show you what's next. Now I'm so excited to show you my favorite part of the process. So we have all of our fabric attached here and we just flip it over to the side with the numbers, and it is very clearly marked. Do not trim on this line, trim on this line. So this is just our 1/4 inch seam allowance for when all of these blocks will go together. So now it's just time to square up. So I use just my ruler and to have a nice straight edge and my rotary cutter, and I just cut it just like that. And we will do this on all 4 sides to get a nice and accurate block. I am loving this. I'm loving the accuracy of the whole process, and I would really like to start implementing foundation paper into my other projects if possible. I just really love, you know, how easy it is. So there we have this gorgeous, accurate, just perfect block. And actually this is one of 4. So I was really good and finished the other ones of these apple block. And we have all 4 of them. So I will take the paper off later. I think this is something I can do when like my husband and I are watching TV in the evenings together. So I'll save it for that. But look how great these look. I'm so excited. Now I will say my first one took a little bit of time. I was moving pretty slow, but by the time I got to my 4th one, I was moving a lot faster and getting really comfortable with the process. So that is how you make the log cabin blocks. If you notice, for month 1, we have some more log cabins, some right here and some right here. So it's the process is just repeated over these other blocks, just using different fabric. So I am going to go ahead and switch gears actually into making the lime block, which utilizes the Courthouse Steps paper. So we will look through our 4-inch foundation pad, and those are economy. It must be in there. Either I flipped through it or it's in the very back. Log cabin, log cabin. There we go. It's the very front, actually. So I think it's going to be a fairly similar process just because this is the same thing. The colors are just laid out differently, but I'm just excited to see how that will work. So I'll take 4 of these papers out. I'm leaving the instructions in. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll tear those out. And then it's time to get cutting on the fabrics that I will need for this block. So we are utilizing that emerald fabric that we cut earlier, which actually I have quite a few leftover strips. So I'm already a little bit ahead of the curve here. I just need to trim these down into the appropriate sizes. And then we also have the chameleon fabric. So that is this one. I will press this and get it cut up, and then we'll get into the piecing. In working with the Courthouse step blocks, I'm realizing that one thing that's a lot faster for me is just going ahead and putting both of these pieces of fabric right side together and then putting the pin in, and that's already completing the first step. So then you get right into stitching on your 1 and 2 line. And also with these, I'm finding they're going a bit faster than the log cabin blocks, just because you can repeat your work on the other side instead of having to go back and forth every single rectangle. You can work on 3 and 2 and then trim and do all of the things sew twice. You can do everything twice, so it just completes the steps a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and sew this one since we already have it good to go. Let me just check to make sure. Yep, right side up, right side down. And we'll take this to the machine and stitch. Slowing down for that pin. I'll take it out. And there we have it. Now, one caveat to that, you can't work on the small piece two at one time, but you can with the rest of them. So let's take our next piece of fabric. We're pretty much at a 1/4 inch there. So we can come over here and stitch on the number 3 line. Press. All right, so now it's time for 4. Yep, also looking at, I can see that almost 1/4 inch. It's a little less actually. I probably should have centered that a little bit better, but that's all right. So now, one thing I do want to mention here. So I got confused for a second because the coloring, this is showing a different color distribution. So this is a typical Courthouse block, whereas your lime block, it's a square. Like you have different squares. So don't let that confuse you, because I was starting to follow this like I was following on the log cabin blocks. That's not going to work for you on this. So just think about it in that every color forms a square. So this would have you believe that you would jump to this like yellow-green color. That's not the case. You're gonna go to your emerald color. So we'll lay this down. And stitch. And so this is what I mean. We can push this back and just go ahead and jump onto the next one. Now this side, because I didn't do such a good job centering it, I am going to want to trim this and establish my seam allowance up front. So let's pull our paper back, fold, and get a good 1/4 inch here, nice and straight. Now we can get rocking and rolling, and this can come right here. And now we stitch. Gosh, we're already on 5. See how quickly this goes? Yeah, when I first started sewing these, I was like, uh-oh, I'm not going to be motivated to work on these because they're taking me so long. But now that I've really gotten into a good groove, it is working for me. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and trim both of those sides. So we can come over here and do 6. We can also come over here and do 7. And now we'll take our ruler and get that nice, accurate seam allowance. There and here. And there we have our square. So now that this color, the emerald color square, is complete, now we make the yellow-green square. So we just did 4, 5. Now we're moving on to 6 and 7. So we can go and line this one up just like that. Whoops, take it to the machine, make sure everything's lined up. And then let's go ahead and sew on the other side because we're already trimmed up. Just like that. Flip it over. And now we can stitch on 7. So I will repeat the process for the rest of my rectangles all the way up to 13. Square everything up. And we will be in a good spot with these line blocks. After some hard work, I am all done with 20 blocks. I don't know if I have ever made 20 blocks in one sitting. Maybe I have, but I'm fairly certain I have not. So I am really proud of myself. I just had so much fun with these. once I got going, they were probably taking me about 60 to 90 minutes per set of 4. That's really how I would do it, was just making them 4 at a time once I got the hang of it. And that seemed to be a good pacing for me and being able to just get everything done in an efficient manner, but also really enjoying the process. I also want to tease something I'm really excited about. I had so much fun making these 4.5-inch squares, and obviously this is a block of the month, so I do not have the rest of the kit, so it's not like I can keep going. I'm at a very natural stopping point. So let me show you what I also did. I used my scraps to make the first of my 2-inch square miniature pineapples from Easy Patterns. I got this pattern at a quilting expo that I was at a little while ago, and I figured what better way to use those scraps than to do some more paper piecing. So this is really tiny. I am really impressed with it. I cannot believe I did this. This again is a 4.5-inch square. This is 2-inch. And so you can just kind of see just how tiny those pieces are. But I think that this mini quilt is going to look great with these Tula fabrics, and it's just going to turn out well. So I will make a separate video on this when I get a little bit further in the process. But for now, I hope you enjoyed my progress on block 1 of the dragon fruit block of the month. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed making all 20 of these blocks together. If you are joining in on this sew along, I'd love to hear in the comment section about what you have to say about it and your thoughts jumping in, or maybe you're just still admiring the project, waiting to get started. As always, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you spend some of your valuable time with me here in my craft room. Thank you for watching. And until next time, happy quilting. Bye.